Yeah, so growing up, I knew all the local teams in the GLIAC and everything. I didn't really know too much about Michigan Tech. But when I started getting recruited by some GLIAC schools, I started understanding a little bit, and the only thing I knew is it was pretty far away from my home and all that. So I didn't really get recruited by Michigan Tech too much. I don't think I was smart enough to make it at Michigan Tech, I always say. So yeah, but the real first time that I started to understand what Michigan Tech was when I was at Grand Valley, and the amount of respect that our coaching staff had for the Michigan Tech coaching staff and their players. And I had no idea about it, but I always knew it was a long drive, but they really liked that coaching staff that they had, up at Michigan Tech. I think 3 out of the 4 years that I was eligible to play, I ended up playing against Michigan Tech. So 2 of them were up at Sherman Field and everything there. 1 at downstate at Grand Valley, and we ended up winning against Michigan Tech every year that we had. But I just remember the toughness level that every Michigan Tech player had at those games. Whether it was first quarter or fourth quarter, it didn't really matter. They're going to play their butts off the entire time. So that was the one thing I do remember about Michigan Tech playing against them, was they're always going to be tough, and they're always going to play to the end. My position coach, Matt Yoch, knew I wanted to get into coaching, and he always told me the best thing to do is get out of the place that you played at, just because so you can go learn something else. And I was fortunate enough to have 2 grad assistants that worked at Grand Valley that got full-time jobs at Michigan Tech, so they knew of me and they knew I wanted to get into it. So it was an easy spot for me to land. Obviously knowing those 2 guys, just those 2 guys, didn't know anybody else up here, but that was kind of how I ended up being up here as my position coach, and then understanding David Sarton and then Eric Yeiter were graduate assistants at Grand Valley, and they were up at Michigan Tech as full-time guys too. I remember as a grad student, Coach Curley told me, one day he's like, you'll never coach a better student athlete than you have at Michigan Tech. And I had no idea, what he was talking about, but obviously, 14, 15 years later, I understand that, you don't have issues, with the student athletes that we have in that locker room, whether it's football, basketball, it doesn't really matter the sport. We don't deal with a lot of the issues just because of the academic standards that you have at Michigan Tech there. And the first couple of years as a grad assistant, obviously you're trying to learn as much as possible, whether it's offense, defense, special teams, just trying to get your hand in anything that you can learn and take back to your position group, that type of stuff. And then you get to that 2014, and that was my first year back on defense. I played defense in college. Then I worked with the offensive line, the tight ends, for my first 3-4 years up here. So that was my first year being back with that 2014 team. I just remember, the leadership that we had, whether it was in the D-line room or the quarterback room, didn't really matter. I mean, the leadership we had on that team was pretty special. And a lot of those guys were going to be seniors. Obviously, you have a quarterback like Tyler Scarlett, who's phenomenal at putting the ball wherever he wanted it. But then you also had some D linemen, a Nelson Winky, a Cam Allen, that the leadership that they brought, and Cam ended up, I think he's he's a doctor now or something like that. So it's like, all right, you understand, some of the guys that you have on that team, what they're doing now, and it kind of relates to, all right, why we were pretty successful that year. It was pretty special. I mean, 2014 team, like I said, there's a lot of good guys on that team, a lot of good leaders there, and then seeing them, what it'd be 10 years later, it's like nothing ever, nobody ever left right there. So it was pretty cool talking about the stories of the Wayne State game, the Northern Michigan game, those type of stuff, the road trips, and just a lot of special people in that group, as you get with any Michigan Tech football team, the people that come through this. But especially that 2014 team, with me being defense, my first year, and talking to those guys, just bringing us a lot of war stories that you had, and not just on the field, but off the field too, whether it was practice or like those long bus trips that you get there. I mean, I'm fortunate, to be here. I always think that, it's not like, obviously this is my, Coach Met is, really the 3rd head coach, that I've worked for, and obviously everybody has, positives that they bring to the table, and, I'm fortunate enough, first and foremost to be part of this staff, but the people that you have, and I've talked about the student athletes a good amount, but the coaching staff that we have right now, all those guys are phenomenal coaches, but even better people. So it's easy to say, hey, I want to be here at Michigan Tech because of the people that I get to deal with, 24/7. And then you get outside of this building basically, and you got the community that all supports Michigan Tech, and it's pretty special. A small town community. Michigan Tech kind of runs this community out here, and to be part of that, people supporting you, it's pretty cool to be part of it. We have, that field turf, up there. Back in the day, they were on grass, going through spring ball with, 20 inches of snow out there. So it's like the people that understand, what Michigan Tech is, the academic, how hard it is academically to make it at Michigan Tech, and then they get to go out in the football field, and obviously it's not as easy, when there's, a lot of snow out there or the weather that you potentially could get. So, the toughness level that you have to have, that the alums understand, that the current guys, start to understand, once they get in their, third, fourth, fifth year out here. That's what I think is just kind of special about this place is everybody that graduates here, all right, they understand it's not easy to be a Michigan Tech football, student athlete here. And, that passes down from, the '74 team to the 2014 team to the 2024 team, and so forth.